Oh, it's just not going live.
Yeah. This will be a great last stream to end YouTube on. Cool. So we got going in the backup stream. So let me post this link for everyone. Cool. So we are live now. I don't know why YouTube changed up their whole system for doing live streaming. It used to be a lot easier, but now it's a little bit more complicated. Um, Sam, check the link in the chat for the most updated one.
Got it. Yep.
Cool. So yeah, so we'll let everyone get moving over into the actual stream now, and I'll pop out both of these chats for those of you that are jumping in. Welcome. Sorry that we're having these problems. I believe just because of the logistical nightmare that is live streaming on YouTube now, I believe we are going to switch back to Facebook next week. We'll be a little bit
Yeah.
better about the announcements and setting all that up. So we'll just give it a few minutes for people that are joining in. For people that are watching this in post, I would assume just like jump ahead 2-3 minutes so that you don't have to watch me and Sam stall the best that we can for the next few minutes.
Good times.
Good times. Happy Friday, Sam.
Thanks, man.
Got any plans for the weekend yet?
I actually have a medical correspondence course the whole weekend,
Oh, cool.
about 1.5 hours away for the fire brigade. So that'll be good. But
Are
can't get
you
any work done.
so have you been doing calls yet?
Yeah. Yeah. I go to most of the course because I'm like 800 meters down the road.
Yeah,
But I
that's cool.
can't really do much because I'm not fully like patched in and qualified.
Okay, sweet. So it looks like people are moving over. Again, sorry about kind of the logistics of this. For those of you watching, definitely post any of the questions that you have. As always, we don't really have much going into this, so it's really just anything related to music, music production, EDM foundations, songwriting for producers. If you are also enrolled in that class, really anything that has anything to do with music or music production, ask us. Beyond that, we can't promise you that we're experts in anything else, but feel free to throw what you have at us.
Did you update the link in the Facebook post?
No, I will do that. So I put it in the comments. Do, do, do. Good idea, though. I wonder if I can just edit this post. Oh, yeah.
James Island has a question.
Okay.
How can you learn to program drums well?
So I can kind of take this if you want. So I'd say
Yep.
first off, if you haven't, we do have a drum programming guide on our website that Sam wrote. I think it'll give you just kind of the basics of what drum patterns might look like in different styles. So definitely first place I would go to is that. I don't know if you want to look for a link for that, but definitely if you're like struggling to program drums, it's going to be the first spot to go. I think one thing that I did that I see a lot of producers do is they overcomplicate drums. Like in reality, especially if you're like programming MIDI drums, unless you're like trying to like, I don't know, like pretend like you're a full live rock kit, it's not too complicated or complex. You really just need to learn like very basics and very fundamentals, and then you're kind of good to go from there. So if you say I don't really get how to program drums, like you know how to draw in MIDI and things like that, but you just don't know how to like program the same loops that one of your heroes gets. Number one thing I can say is take 5 of your favorite tracks where you're like, I really like the drum loops in these and I want to make stuff like them. Bring them into your DAW and then try to recreate each one of those drum loops. It's going to be tough, especially if you're a beginner, to like recognize what all the different sounds are and to be able to like hear everything. But just getting really granular. Use the waveform to kind of tell you, hey, it looks like there's something hitting here, or like, oh, the hi-hat's not hitting directly on the grid, it's a little bit to the side. Use that to kind of cue you in on all the intricacies that go into the drum loops. But I promise you, if you do that with 5, 10 tracks, you will not have that question anymore. It's so simple, but if you do that, promise you, you'll be good to go.
Yeah, one thing to add to that is cut up percussion loops.
Yeah.
Like, I think for me, when I was starting out, the biggest shift in making better drums was, instead of using one shots all the time, it was like getting 4 or 5 drum loops, like top loops, and then just cutting them up and picking different parts from each, because you get a more organic feel, you know, um, or taking some Foley and then including that. So give that a go.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a creative side when it comes to programming drums. I think especially when you get, I think it's like really easy for, I guess, not really any style of electronic music. If there's like pre-processed percussion and drum loops, like you can get creative, and like a lot of those interesting rhythms and textures can come from that. It's more than just like, like a drum rack in Ableton that you have different samples on. So, get your
Yep.
fundamentals down, kick on every single beat, snare on the 2 and 4s if you're doing house music, not a whole lot more than that, but kind of go beyond that to get more creative.
Seven Skies has a video somewhere. It might be on his YouTube channel, and he basically says, like, fundamentally, there are only 4 places in a beat where you can place a drum sound,
Mm-hmm.
and beyond that, like, you can't do much about it. So that's what you need to think about. Not overcomplicate it, like you said earlier, Connor,
Yeah.
and use white space as well,
Yeah.
like silence. You don't
Huge.
need a sound or a hi hat or something playing every single 16th note. You know.
Cool. So we got another question from H3VRT. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that, but he said,
I think
question
it's
about the
heart.
heart.
I,
I'm
I, I don't know.
I'm guessing. I'm tired.
That's my guess.
If it's pronounced heart, please let us know. Um, so he has a question about the course EDM Foundations. He said, I'm about to get into the mixing stage of the first track, and so far I've been following along with everything Connor does, but putting my own twist on it as I go along. Is this okay? 100%.
Yeah.
So, we talk about this a decent amount, but the goal with EDM Foundations isn't for you to mimic everything exactly. It's for you to, he says it's pronounced heart, awesome. It's for you to, get a sense of the fundamentals, to see what it looks like to produce a track so that you can go produce your own music. So if you feel like at some point the melody should go somewhere else, the chord progressions should go somewhere else, maybe you don't like the reverb that I put on, 100% go forward with that. Your goal isn't to copy us and to get the same song. It's to be able to kind of learn enough so that you can do your own thing. So, you know, I'm kind of like extrapolating off of this for people, because I feel like we do get this question a lot where people are nervous about experimenting off of our project files, but in reality, that's what we want from this, so that you can do that with your own original productions. So good question, 100%. Definitely feel free to kind of put your own twist on it. Like, we've even had a few different people that have like used our projects as kind of the foundation for new songs. So they kind of like rip away all the midis, they kind of change the drum patterns, and then like create other songs inspired by it. We love that. We love to see people use that kind of starting idea of EDM Foundations to be able to build off of that to something new. Cool. So we got no other questions in the chat. Let me go into my email and grab a couple of the ones that we had from earlier. But for those of you that are here, we will always give you priority if you have any questions. Okay, so we got a question from Ethan that he sent me earlier, and kind of a big one. We can go as deep as we want to into this, but it'll be a good one to kind of jump off of. He said, I'm sure many of the fellow students, as well as myself, will be very interested in hearing your opinions about the feasibility of trying to make a living and support a family, etc., by producing electronic music. Is it even possible? If it is, what are the chances of one actually doing it? Very slim. How do you make money with the EDM? What is required of one to do so? So this is a question that we got a lot. I think we're very careful with the way that we approach the concept of making a living off of music, because we don't want to encourage people to make life choices that they'll regret. So
Yeah.
you might get some people that say you got to quit your job and pursue music full time. Sam and I aren't naive enough to think, one, you're guaranteed success, and two, that there's nothing else that no one else or anything else that you need to support with your career. So, like first things first, we are really careful about that. Sam and I are definitely more conservative when it comes to making a living off of music and like telling people whether or not they can do that. But that's the first thing that I think you really need to think of. I feel like one of the central ideas that we always propose is that you can, but you can't plan on it. I think if you work your ass off, if you invest as much time and free time as you have into this, something will come of it. There's no way that you can guarantee that you'll have a successful artist project or that, you'll get good enough as a sound designer to be doing work for companies or sample packs or all these different things. Are there ways to like make money, at least like a side income off of music? Absolutely. But I would encourage you not to like expect anything of it. I don't think when either Sam and I got into music, we expected that we'd be making a living off of music. At least now we're both doing it off education. I did it off producing for a while. But yeah, it is like a tough world. If you've listened to any of our podcasts, even the people who've like quote unquote made it, they're making a living off of music, they're nervous about it because there isn't this like guaranteed long-term success. So I think the best advice I could give is to, continue pursuing a sustainable, in need career, but still work on music on the side. If you can bring in some side income and then like potentially maybe that gets to a point where at some point that can roll into more of like a full-time position for you, it's awesome. It's so great. But again, like you can't plan or prepare for anything. Doesn't mean you should stop working. Doesn't mean you should not expect it or want it, but it's just like good to keep all of those things in mind. Thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah. I mean, 100% agree, obviously. And we have talked about this a lot. I would say one more thing, though, because is his name Ethan?
Yeah. Ethan, yeah.
Yeah. Ethan, you mentioned like support a family. I think that changes the stakes a bit. I mean, if you're like, if you're 19 or 20 years old and you're thinking of like just having a go at it, sure. And you're single and you don't have a kid to support. That's different to being like in your 30s and having a family. And I have had people email me before who are in that position and they've asked me whether they should quit their job and try to do music full time. And I just think that's super risky and also irresponsible.
Yeah.
So, it depends on your life situation as well, financial situation. I've known quite a few people who have, built up funds to like take a year off work and just make as much music as they can. But everyone who I know personally who's done that has not succeeded. So it's harder than you think. And the other thing is for some people, it becomes, it's stressful, but it also changes it can change your desire and passion to make music. Mm-hmm. When you're working a full-time job and maybe you get paid fairly well and you're making music on the side, there's no pressure to make music. There's no financial incentive. You can be more creative. Like Inama is a good example of an artist like that. He makes very good music. He does quite well. He still works a 9 to 5.
He just went full time,
and I think he works.
Not to steamroll you, or he just
Did
quit. He just quit like a month ago. Not to steamroll you.
Oh, no way. Well, forget about that then. Okay, interesting.
But I think specific to him, even with him, like
my point still stands.
Yeah, no, he was like releasing on big labels, was doing all the things that he wants to, and like got all of that moving before he made that decision. It was like playing shows, was doing education and production work and all those things. So he was methodical about it.
Exactly. As I was saying though, for some people, and I don't know why this happens to some people and not others, like they start doing music full time and then they end up not enjoying music production anymore. And it doesn't just happen with music, it happens with all kinds of creative fields. So I would say if there's a difference, it's the people who get into the game expecting to make money off this, and like that's quite high up on their list, and then they start making money, and it's they weren't intrinsically motivated to make music in the first place, which is fine. You can just hire a ghost producer. It doesn't matter. Like, do what you want.
Yeah. I feel like I had something to add on that. So I posted a link. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say is the way that I always try to frame music is a hobby that a select number of people turn into a sustainable career. So if somebody said, "Hey, I'm gonna go make a living off of flying kites," you'd be like, "What are you, a dumbass? Like, how can you make a living off of flying
Mm.
kites?" It's kind of the same thing as because you like don't have this perception. You're like, how could you get paid for that? Music's kind of the same thing. Like such a small percentage of the people that get into it are able to make that career that you just can't count on it. Sam and I are both lucky that we did it. And to speak, to humble brag a little bit, both of us worked our asses off to get here to be able to like teach music. I produced for a while and like did that as like a full-time career. And I, had to work my ass off and it took me a while to get to that point. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
In terms of some practical advice, I linked an article in the comment, which is on our website, that's called How to Make Money as a Producer. It's a bunch of different ways that you can actually make money. So this is like things that we're telling you if you like are interested in like a side hustle with music, 100% you can bring in some additional funds and also like just I don't know, making some money off of something that you love to do is cool. So it's definitely something to think about. If you all haven't read that, go ahead and do that. Cool. So let's jump into one of the comments in the chat. So first things from Ryan Bent, who said, I've always struggled when a producer talks about which producers inspired them. So my question is, what do you use from a producer to get inspiration? Kind of like specifically like melody, chord progression, sound design, groove. So I think everyone's going to view this differently, but when I'm trying to get inspiration from somebody, it's specific to whatever that artist has. For certain artists, I love their chord progressions and melodies. For other, artists, I'm thinking about sound design. For other artists, I'm thinking about mixing and, pretty much like across the board. So to give you like a frame of reference, I've got a bunch of like inspiration playlists on Spotify, and I even got really granular with this once where I've made different inspiration playlists for like different things that I liked from songs. So I had one that was just like a mixing playlist. So I had songs that I hated, but the pianos were mixed super well and had this like really interesting tone that I wanted to grab some of that and pull into my own music. So across the board with my inspirations, there's normally like one or two things that I'm like, okay, I want to take that and fuse that into my sound. And that's something that I also like think about every couple of months, kind of thinking about what are these new things that are inspiring me as a listener and then ultimately as a musician. So yeah, it definitely like depends on what each artist is. Might just be like an energy or a vibe. You might not know why you're inspired by it, but I try my best, just because I'm more of like a heady producer, to get more granular, being like, okay, I like this song not because I like whatever this style is, but maybe there's a mixing or a sound design element that I can incorporate into something that's truer to my voice. Any thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I'd take a similar approach. I have like a Spotify playlist for songs that usually songs that have something in them that stands out the first time I listen. Um, it might be the vocal hook, it might be the mix, it might be something else. So I take that approach, but I feel like I reference this podcast episode in every single chat we do. But if you listen to episode 99 with Anki, he has this
Yeah.
awesome process that he uses techniques and like sounds and chords and little things to draw from.
Cool.
Are we still live, Connor? Thomas just asked if the stream died for anyone.
Looks like it's not live. Oh, they said it's back. Cool.
Okay.
I don't know. We said this earlier when the stream was live, but we're going to be switching back to Facebook next week, or next in 2 weeks, just because this YouTube experiment has not been great. Cool. So let's just keep going with a few of the other questions. It looks like we're back in the live, so let's get rolling with it. Thomas Folk asked, what's a good way to learn sound design? I'm familiar with synth basics. but designing sounds from scratch feels like turning random knobs. I feel like this is something that we talk about a lot. First off, go through the Serum bootcamp that you have as an access to EDM Foundations. If you haven't done that, go do that before you try anything else. Um, there's a lot of different ways to get better at sound design. Some people, if you just want something that's just going to do it for you, Syntorial is helpful. I think really the best way to learn sound design and the way that your favorite artists learn sound design is by reverse engineering presets. So, if there's a preset or a sound that you really like, let's just say it's in Serum, create a new instance of Serum, put them to the left and right, and then just pretty much copy everything that Serum patch has. Doing that will kind of tell you, hey, what are some of the things that I can do to get a sound that I like in Serum, which is really the ultimate goal of what you want. I think when, like a professional sound designer is going to develop a sound, part of them might have something in mind, but part of them just like knows how to experiment. They know the types of oscillators that they like. They know how to manipulate those oscillators with like FM or AM synthesis to get something that they like. They know what filters they like. They know what types of automation they can put on a filter. They know how to use automation or LFOs and envelopes. And then in terms of processing, they kind of have a palette for sounds that they like. So the, process of reverse engineering presets is just, it's basic, but it works. Sam and I were kind of talking about the like simplicity, just like getting back to the basics. Those are the things that nobody wants to do. They think, oh, there's some other thing that I can do to learn sound design. But if you do that with 50 to 100 presets over the next 6 months, you won't have this problem. I promise you that. Anything to add on that, Sam?
Nothing to add. That's the answer I would give.
Cool. So, I feel like we had another one from Hart. Apologize for the lag, everyone. I am not happy about it, but there is a little bit of a lag. So Hart had another question. If you have time for this, what's your advice on implementing your own vocals into your tracks without much vocal training or experience? How could I improve that aspect of production? So I think there's a lot that goes into wanting vocals, your like original vocals on your own music. Step one, if like that's something that you want to do that's fun and you're just like, hey, I want to like record some vocals, maybe get a couple vocal processing plugins like a CLA vocals and put that onto my voice, go for it. Like have fun with that. I think realistically, as somebody that is doing that, going through that process, it's kind of involved if you're somebody who doesn't know how to sing and doesn't know how to process vocals to learn how to do that effectively, especially if you're producing everything else outside of it. I think there's not a lot of producers that do every single aspect of their productions and sing on top of it. Like I think Alito is an example of a producer. There's not that many. Fitch does that, but I've been told from a friend that like really slows up his workflow because there's so many things that go into it. But at the end of the day, if that's something that's like fun for you, 100%, you got to chase that. That'll be cool. I would recommend, if you're kind of clueless on it, talk to people that sing. Talk to one of your friends from university or college that was a singer that did voice lessons and kind of like get a sense of what that might be. Like if you suck at singing, you're not going to get any better at singing if you buy a $500 mic. Like you're probably going to need to do some voice lessons. I did voice lessons for the past 2 summers. It was awesome. I love doing it. And then, from a vocal mixing side, it's a skill that you can learn. There's definitely really good resources out in YouTube. And just in general, if you want to learn vocal mixing. So it's definitely something to think of. If you're like, hey, I'm inspired by this, I'm drawn to add original vocals to my own music, definitely like go chase that. But yeah, hopefully that gives you kind of like a holistic view of the way that I would approach that question. Cool. So I think with that, I don't feel like we have any other questions lined up. So for everyone watching, feel free to post any questions that you have in the chat.
Here we go.
Oh, we got
Hydra. So you guys mentioned using references to take elements from tracks that you like, such as sound design. How do you approach recreating those elements? I mean, that's the hard part if you don't know what you're doing. But I would say, first of all, like that is, as a producer, the closest you will get to like deliberate practice. Taking a sound or an idea and then trying to recreate it in your own music. So it's supposed to be hard, and you're kind of supposed to feel lost because that's where the true learning happens. So I wouldn't look for a way or like a tactic to make it super easy and comfortable, first of all, to preface the rest of my answer. I guess it depends what it is. Like you can't. There's some things that you can't recreate and solve if you don't have the knowledge for. So if you hear a certain sound, let's say it's like a pluck sound, and you like it, if you have enough knowledge on synthesis, you should be able to go, okay, it's got like a very strong transient. Maybe they're using like a short pitch envelope. Um, it's quite like soft as well. The body's quite soft, so how can I recreate that? Maybe I have like a less aggressive filter, and but if you don't know any of that stuff, then it's you're not going to think about that, and you won't even know where to start. So this is why it's crucial to learn like the fundamentals of synthesis, the fundamentals of music theory, so that you can listen to a chord or a chord progression and go, okay, like I kind of know what this is. You know, you might not be able to pick every note, but you get the general gist. Um, and a good resource for learning that is Connor's track breakdowns, edmprod.com/TB. So learning the fundamentals and then like hearing these things and hearing these elements and having a basic understanding. I don't really think there's another way to approach it. I think you need to have that foundational base. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to feel lost all the time. But I don't think it's ever going to be easy.
Yeah. On our most recent podcast with Jay Pryor, um, for those of you who don't know, he's like signed to Universal, co-produced a song for Stevie Aoki that has a billion streams. Guy knows his shit. And I kept kind of asking him, how did you get good at production? Because he essentially went from not knowing how to produce, and within a year, he was already getting signed. And he was like, I just remade tracks. He's like, I struggled. It
Mm.
was tough, but that's really all he did. And, you know, he did other things outside of that, even gave you a shout out in the podcast, Sam. But yeah, at the end of the day, like that's what he did because it trains you so much. So it is difficult and it's designed to be difficult, but it helps you immensely. So I think, yeah, like going back to what Sam said, if you know your tools, you can kind of muck around and get there at some point, and then just be resourceful. Talk to the people that have a little bit more experience than you. Like you're not going to be able to get everything exactly. I think some people get a little bit too caught up on that. But yeah, trust me, like that is a humongous thing. Hopefully that gave you some more context, but feeling lost, like Sam said, is a natural part of that process. Um, cool. So yeah, anybody else have any other questions? Let us know. Otherwise, everyone watching this in post will have a little bit of dead air. I'm trying to think about anything else that I want to chat about. That's been
I would
bugging
just
me.
say on that, like
Yeah.
that feeling of feeling confused or lost. I've been working my way through a book called Range by David Epstein, and he kind of talks about, well, he makes the argument that learning slowly is like the best way to learn.
Hmm.
What he means by that is like it's messy, you know,
Yeah.
like if you look at all these experts, it's not that they always had a super structured approach to everything, which kind of flies in the face of what I've been teaching and talking about for so many years, which is like the deliberate practice. I don't think that applies to electronic music production as closely as it does to other learning environments like piano.
Yeah.
It's different because if you want to sit down and like learn piano, you can, and you're going to get live feedback in real time. If you play a note that doesn't fit, you're going to know. When you're making music and when you're learning production, it's not as simple as that. You don't necessarily know if your arrangement is good because it's not that easily quantifiable. You don't necessarily know if your melody is as catchy as it could be because it's not as quantifiable. And so this is the kind of thing that you learn over long periods of time through listening to music on one end and then comparing it subconsciously even to the stuff you're making. I don't think you can make that process like super systematic the way you can playing piano or learning violin. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the book again? If you want to post that.
It's called Range by David Epstein. I think that's how you spell it.
Cool. Yeah. So really got nothing much more to add on to that. So let's write around if there's any other questions. I'm trying to think. Anything that's kind of come up recently that we feel like chatting about. Otherwise, up to y'all to come to us with stuff that you have questions on. Anything that we want to talk about, we normally put into a course or blog article. So don't have a whole lot. What are your favorite distortion plugins, Sam?
I use Isotope Trash quite a bit. Ableton Saturate it a lot. And I need to download it again, but I used to use the Fab Filter. What's it called? The Fab Filter Saturation
Saturn
plugin? Saturn. I used to use that a lot.
Yeah.
But I think when I switched over computers or something, I didn't re-download it. But most of the time, I would say like 80% of the time, I'm using either Ableton Saturator or Amp or Cabinet.
Yeah.
Or the guitar rig amps. Have you used those?
Oh yeah, like Guitar Rig 5 or whatever.
Yeah, like ever since I was talking to Mr. Bill about it on the podcast, and he said like he uses the Bit Crusher and Guitar Rig instead of Ableton's one. And I was like, oh, let's try that out. Just it sounds really nice. So I would say those. Yeah, I love Amp as well. Like you can get some awesome sounds with that.
I feel like people don't talk about how. I don't know. This kind of came out of me working on a script about distortion for an upcoming mixing course. But there are so many freaking distortion and saturation tools that are out there that also I use.
Yeah.
Like I think in terms of like reverbs, I have maybe 5 that I use on a regular basis. But like distortion and saturation, it's probably like 10 or 15. Because like everything just has like kind of their niche that they fit into where they fit into my production workflow. Like, saturation is just like, it needs a little bit of body. It's like really anything, run it through. I just need a bit more body, a bit more warmth. I think we're going in saturation. If I want to distort the living crap out of a sound, we're going into trash 2. If want something like pretty metallic, aggressive, I'm going into trash 2. If I don't know what I want, I'm going into Saturn because I feel like Saturn's a jack of all trades, master of none, but it's kind of like a jack of all trades because it does, the softer side of distortion, which is saturation, and then like heavier distortion. It also has guitar amps and stuff. But yeah, outside of that, Decapitator, trash 2 for me. Decapitator I love. PSP Vintage Warmer is a classic one. Tape saturation, the Slate Digital virtual tape I love. A couple of the UAD stuff like the Ampex ATR 102 tape machine is really good for saturation. Overdrive and Ableton amp, Waves guitar amps. There's a lot.
Yeah. Someone was asking about, do you have any resources or other sites about layering?
Yeah.
We still haven't. I feel like we talked about doing this 2 years ago, like putting out a massive guide or something on this, but we haven't. But years ago, and I mean years ago, I did put out like a YouTube course on this.
Yeah.
For a company that I used to work for. There is also a structure and arrangement one, which I don't really recommend.
If you know nothing,
I would just shoot for songwriting for producers if you can. Yeah.
If you know nothing,
like if you know
learn
nothing
something from it.
I don't promote these because they're old and I don't think they're that good. But like, I mean, the layering one has some good techniques and tactics.
I don't know how deep you are into EDM foundations, but at least in my version, especially in track 4, I talk a lot about layering. Track 3 and track 4, I talk a lot about layering. So if you're somebody that's confused about that, definitely do like go through that. I feel like so often, not to crap on anyone watching these calls, but so often people ask me questions that are solved probably in EDM foundations, or at least in one of the bonus things, which all of you have access for, unless a homie gave you a link to this YouTube stream. So, yeah, like if you get through all this stuff in your EDM Foundations account, and you're still confused on this stuff, let's talk. But like
Mm.
I've spent nearly a year designing that course by itself, and then Sam and I had developed the previous version, and then Sam developed the first version. Like we've spent a lot of time teaching this, and we try our best to like ease you in to make sure that you understand all these concepts. But if you've gone through all 4 songs and you still struggle with layering, like that's something that you can dive into. But I promise you, a lot of these issues that you run into will be stuck with that. So note for anyone else that's listening. Cool. Were there any other questions in the chat, Sam?
We don't have any at the moment.
Cool. Let me think on this. For those of you that are in Google Chrome, I didn't realize that you can pin tabs. So if you like right click the tab, you can hit pin so that you don't accidentally close a tab if you're in like a live call or something.
Connor, when did you find this out?
Like a month ago.
Are you serious?
Am I late to
So
the
you've
game?
been using Chrome. You've been using Chrome for how long?
Probably since high school.
Oh man, pinning tabs is like, oh, it's the best. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You never just thought to like, hey, maybe if I right click this, there's some options that come up.
Well, because I've been muting tabs for years. But like, so I like literally
it's literally below
pin tab, mute tab.
Oh man, I love it.
So we got, yes, Thomas Volk also didn't know. Hell yeah. I feel like it happened because we had like a live call, just like a team call with me, Sam, and Aiden. What just happened there?
No, go ahead. It's just I'm amazed at how many people didn't know about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like multiple times we've been in calls, Sam, and I have like a fervent point that I'm trying to make in a discussion, and then I just like Command W and like drop the tab that I'm in.
Yeah. Oh, Connor's gone.
Yeah. And then I just come back and you and Aiden are laughing your asses off. I love that. So Vikram asked a question, which is, what are the best ways to develop production skills? We've talked about that in 3 different ways during this call today. The Jay Pryor advice, which is to recreate music, and then our advice, which is to go through the courses that you paid for. Like, people are looking for these silver bullets, but you spent a lot of money on these courses because there's a lot in it. There is so much valuable information. So just, kind of put your head down, go through all that stuff, and then come out, and then you can start being like, okay, what are these gaps that I have in my production? I talk about this a little bit in the like introductory section in EDM Foundations, the like course flow for EDM Foundations complete customers, where I talk about like you need to just get through the course, take a step back, work on some original music, figure out what you're lacking in, take some of the bonus courses, and then from there you should be good to go. But if you haven't done that, like that information's right there for you. I just think a lot of people don't have the like grit and determination to power through the courses. Like, your goal right now, your goal with music isn't to take courses. You want to be making music. But in order to learn how to make music, you either need to just like muck around on yourself and waste time on YouTube for 10 years or go through the structured course that you freaking paid for. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. There you go.
We had somebody in our last call who asked us, they said they were like bored in our courses and didn't know what to do on it. And, that's a little bit on us. Like it's an educational product. We're not trying to be like Andrew Huang or like Reed Steffen. Like we're not entertainers, we're teachers. Like obviously there's time we can always be better about being more entertaining and making the content more engaging. But, if you are truly passionate about this and you want to get better, you have to stomach that and get through it. For example, I had a call with somebody who took EDM Foundations and songwriting for producers, and he's like really determined, has been working his ass off for the past year and has made really, really great growth. And we got in a live call, and I asked him for his feedback on the courses, and he, to my face, was just like, or at least to the video chat, was like, Connor, songwriting for producers was boring as shit. Like, I had this like struggle so much. He's like, I had to force myself to sit down in order to go through your courses. Yeah, feelings were a little bit hurt, but he understood. He's like, I am kind of bored right now. Connor is re-explaining this 10 times because everybody needs to learn different ways. But he understood that I need to do this because I want to be a better musician. I want to be a better songwriter.
Mm.
And it's simple, but that's kind of it. And going back to the idea, like somebody who's bored, like if you're like genuinely bored, that's one thing. But if you're not disciplined to develop the skills that you want to, you need to figure out why that is. If you are like, I have these big dreams and goals and aspirations in music, but you can't complete EDM foundations in 6 months, like you need to figure out why that is. If you're busy, if you have life stuff going on, obviously, like this isn't like a catch-all. You should be disappointed if you haven't finished the course yet. But like, we're kind of handing you the keys to the castle here, and you need to take it and run with it. If there's things that we can do on our end to help you with that, let us know. That's why these calls exist in the first place, to keep people motivated, to keep people going, and to, get one-to-one feedback on questions that you might be having. Anything to add in that, Sam?
Oh, I mean, you nailed it, but I would say EDM Foundations was never intended to be like a short, like enjoyable course. Obviously we want you to enjoy it and have fun and all that kind of stuff, but the biggest objection that we get from people who we pitch the course to is, I can just learn this from YouTube. And if you want to learn from YouTube, go ahead. But it's very hard to find like comprehensive, 10-hour walkthroughs of songs on YouTube that are systematically designed. It took us 8 months to make the course, and it's a long course. And I know that there are parts of it which are like mundane and boring. And I mean, we filmed it. Like some of the recording was like, oh my goodness, like I have to do this again.
Yeah.
Especially when you mess up the video. But a lot of learning is like that. Like it's not always enjoyable. I think that's a mistake that we make. We get into music or we get into like a creative field. We have fun for the first 3 to 6 months, and then it starts getting hard, and we think, wait, I must be doing something wrong. Like, why has this become difficult all of a sudden? It's normal. It happens to everyone.
I'm trying to think if I have anything to add on that.
I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
Like, we never want a course that's good and gets you excited but doesn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
Because like I've been in the online course industry, or like the online business industry since I was 14, so like 10 years. And I've bought a lot of courses, and I will safely say that the majority of them are all talk, and like they don't really teach you anything that you couldn't learn from a book. And they're overhyped and all that kind of stuff. And so as much as I can and we can, Connor and I, we want to avoid that, and we want to actually deliver action. But, that means that we're kind of filtering out a large segment of producers who are looking for the quick win, who are looking for the silver bullet. I know that you guys aren't, because you're on this call and like you bought the course knowing that it was comprehensive. And I appreciate that. But we're not going to change our model or like the design of our courses to be easier just so we can get more people in the door.
I mean, what would you have done if this course existed when we first started? Like, it's mind-blowing to me, because this is exactly
to be honest, Connor, to be honest, like when I first started, I probably would have been like, oh no, it's too hard.
You got duped.
Or like I wouldn't have had the patience.
Yeah.
But I was also like 13 or 14 years old. So, but yeah, it would have been super helpful, because there wasn't even like YouTube's a lot better now, but back then,
oh, it's terrible.
Oh man, it was so hard to find things.
Um, yeah, I don't really know. I feel like I've got nothing more to add on that. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
I
got
think
lots
that's
of
good.
thoughts on that, but yeah, we have one person that said it took him 3 years to find a course like this. He even paid for private classes that weren't as comprehensive. Like, it's tough for me to fully
Yeah.
understand, and this is coming from a place of privilege to a point, but EDM Foundations is so valuable. It is immensely fucking valuable. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. You're all in this course. Like, I'm saying this because I truly believe it. We've worked our ass off of on this. And like going back to what I said earlier, Sam said we developed this for 8 months, but we also had, a decade of teaching experience between us and also 2 other versions of EDM Foundations that you all have access to as well. But um, yeah, I don't know. I've always loved music and made a decision that I also, if I'm gonna do what I want with this, I need to learn how to produce music and like need to learn to love the process of getting better at things.
Mm.
And the more that I've kind of incorporated that, the more that I've enjoyed understanding what do I suck at and how can I get better. The faster that I began to grow. So that's we kind of been going back to that this call, but that's the number one thing that I can give to all of you. I would say the majority of you in this call aren't 80% of the way done with EDM Foundations, but um, it's something for you to think of. And if you don't feel like you need to finish EDM Foundations and you're still asking these fundamental questions, the answers are in there. You just need to get going through the process more. I think
Mm.
any producer at any level could benefit from EDM Foundations. They're going to learn new things about producing. They're going to learn new things about workflow. They're going to get our insights on talking about the why of production, not just seeing it. There's so many things that are valuable. So that's what I would recommend for people that might think I don't really need to go back into the course. Like, figure out what it's going to take for you to get through it. With that, that's enough ranting. Let's dive into some of these other questions. um, James Ireland asks, how long does it take to get good enough to get songs on legit labels, or at least just get a professional sound? It's not really like a length thing; it's a time thing. So, for example, I kind of mentioned earlier we had Jay Pryor on our previous podcast, and like within a year, he was already getting hit up by major labels. That's not the norm, but he was putting in like 15, 16-hour days during a gap year that he took after high
Mm.
school when he was 18, 19, where he just produced for 16 hours every day. Burnout is something that we can talk with that, but he just spent so much time. And, if you're just producing for like an hour a day, you're not going to be able to get there in a year. That's one of the most, something that a lot of people don't understand. So, for example, we've got a podcast with Kill Paris, which should be coming out at some point tonight. I'm having trouble uploading it. But I asked him his advice on, for new producers, and he said, it took me 10 years to get to a point where I had something that people wanted in music. Like, it takes you a while.
Mm.
This is something that we could talk about for a while, but there's no way to predict. The only thing that you can do right now is to control how much time you're putting in. The more time you're putting in, the faster you're going to get there. Some people it takes a year, some people it takes 10 years. I don't know enough about you and your grit and determination and experiences to say that, but there isn't some, formula I could, plug you into.
Yeah, I would totally back that up. I think people focus too much on like the years and months, but not the consistent hours put in every day.
Yeah.
I know people who have spent 10 years making music and it doesn't sound that good. And then there's like a J Pry, or like there was another guy who won a remix competition a while back, and he'd been producing for like 8 or 9 months. I
Yeah.
forgot his name. He like came on the map and then he went away. If I remembered his name, Connor, you would know. But it's about the time that you put in, and it's also about how strategic you are with that time. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at Jay Pryor, like you said earlier, he remade a lot of music. That is
Yeah.
probably one of the best things you can do with your time. But if you're just doing what you know for 2 hours a day for 2 years, if you're just not learning anything new, you're just like, you open up your DAW, do the same thing every time. You start with the drum pattern. You're not gonna progress as fast as you would as if you were working at the edge,
Yeah.
challenging yourself, learning new techniques, going into that zone where you're kind of uncomfortable. And to be honest, that's more enjoyable anyway. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
It's like the flow state, like you find that optimal balance of challenge and ease. When you get in there, that's where the learning happens.
So we had a couple other questions. It's kind of wrapping up, so we'll just run through the rest of these. One of them, which we can kind of both speak on, which was for EDM Foundations, did you guys write, produce the tracks first and then recreate them when you recorded them? Or is the track you go through and the chorus your first go? So with the initial version of EDM Foundations Legacy, Sam, you just did that as you went, correct?
I had like some basic ideas,
Okay.
but yeah, I pretty much did it as I went.
So, with the second and third versions of EDM Foundations, we did have project files kind of already designed and in mind. The main reason for this is we can make the learning so much more effective. And in terms of effective, means you're getting more valuable information and there's less crap that you have to wade through. You're not watching us think like, oh, I got to spend an hour figuring out what this preset's going to be, or like I can't get the snare to fit and I got to find what the right sample is. Like it saves you the time of having to do that. The downside of us doing that is you don't see the countless hours that go into an actual project. You don't see me, spending 3 hours processing the bass in track 3 to figure out how to get it to punch through the mix when we have the flute coming in and kind of finding the balance of that. The goal, is to get you through the workflow of producing a track, to teach you all the fundamentals. What are the things that go into creating a professional sounding track? And then, yeah, like with that, let's just like get through that process and see all the things that go into it. It doesn't show you, like I said, all the things that kind of go into like an actual track production process, but it just shows you kind of like a streamlined, more practical, precise. So, a reasonable question. That is one of the downsides of that, but just from our experience, that's way more valuable than a 20-hour version of track 1 as opposed to a 4-hour version of track 1. I'd rather just like tell you this lesson and then give you the kind of like boot camp version of here's the shit that you actually need to know to produce music.
I would just add to that especially with this course, one of the principles that we wanted to follow was like staggered difficulty. So yes. Like the first project is a lot easier than the fourth one. You're using a lot less techniques, a lot less instruments, all that kind of stuff. And there's a reason for that. Like we want you to learn what you need to know when you need to know it. Mm-hmm. And if we were working on these projects from scratch, it's a lot harder to be strategic about what we're teaching. So like before we even started making the project files, Connor and I had a conversation and it was like, what are we going to teach people in each project? What are the core things that producers need to know?
Like we spent, to give you some insight on development. I don't know if anyone cares, but we don't have that many questions. We got like one or two more, which I'll get to, but, like I spent 2 weeks reworking project files for the first and second song. So initially the like house track was meant to be track 1, and then the future bass track was meant to be track 2. But after, when I was like developing the scripts and everything for it, it made more sense to present a more like basic elementary version of the future bass song and then kind of get into more complicated, complex, intermediate topics with track 2. And that was like a 2-week thing that I did not want to have to do, but I had to like rework everything with those project files to make it so the future bass is more beginner friendly and the house is kind of more beginner intermediate.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have done that if we just did the songs right away. We needed to spend time to develop it. What is the most intentional, thoughtful way that we could present all of this information? Cool. Let's just quickly run through some of these last ones. We got one that says, I have a hard time switching to analyze mode and fall back into listen mode frequently. I think he's talking about, on analyzing other people's music. Should you just focus in on one instrument at a time and filter out all the other frequencies? I don't think there's not really a rhyme or reason when it comes to analyzing music. I think being intentional about it is huge. Just like putting it in your DAW, shoving away distractions and really focusing on it is step 1. If you've done that, you're kind of good for whatever else you're going to be getting out. I think like you can just use your ears. You're trying to train your ears to kind of like hear through the music and hear all the things that are going on. I remember at the start for me, using analysis tools was helpful. So like using an EQ and like hearing what's the mono image sound like? What do the sides sound like? What's going on with the bass? What's going on with the highs? Am I, at what point do I just hear like white noise? And at what point am I starting to get some of the tone from the chords and all that stuff? So Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of rhyme or reason. From the analysis side, I believe I used a lot of the isotope insight stuff. So they have like a spectroscope. They've got a vectorscope. I don't know what they're all called, but like gives you like the stereo image and things like that, which is really helpful. But yeah, anything to add on that, Sam? I don't really get too technical with it, but yeah, good to like think about ways that you can optimize that. I like that.
I should do this more myself, but like just sessions where you're listening to music without looking at anything.
Yeah,
Like close your eyes, chuck some headphones on, and just like actually focus on the music. It sounds so simple, but it's actually hard,
yeah,
especially when you're used to like checking social media all the time. It's hard to just sit there and listen to music. It's not as stimulating as like watching Netflix or even watching a spectrum analyzer. But when you do that and you block out all the other distractions, you start to hear things that you're not going to hear when you're just listening to music while driving or doing some other activity. So maybe do that once every week or every 2 weeks or something. You won't learn as much technical stuff, but you'll pick up little ideas. Like going back to what we were talking about before.
yeah.
Um, I use this example a lot, but there was a song that I always used to listen to from Omnia called, I think it was Infinite or something like that.
Okay.
One of my favorite songs and a trance song. I loved it. And then one day I decided that I'd have a listening session where I just listened to music, blacked out the room, wasn't doing anything else. And that song came on. And for the first time ever, I noticed that he was using like a cricket sound over the kick drum, you know? And then it was like I couldn't unhear it. It was so obvious, but I'd never picked up on that before because I was just listening to it, not like listening to it deeply. And then so on the next song I made, I was like, let me layer like a cricket sound over this kick drum, you know? So it's little things like that that you'll pick up on when you actually listen intentionally as opposed to passively.
Um, I guess one tip kind of on that to tie it up, intentional listening is absolutely huge, and I think with that, one thing that I learned from like one of my previous production partners was immersing yourself in music is one of the best things that you can do for your inspiration and creativity.
Mm.
Um, so this guy has like really great hip hop cuts, and his wasn't that good of a technical producer, but just he just got it in terms of what makes a hip hop song work. But that man, 24 hours a day, if we weren't like hanging out or if we weren't producing music, he was listening to music. If we were like walking to go get something to eat, he was listening to music, almost to the point where it kind of was obnoxious. Like we're eating dinner and he's got his like AirPods in and he's listening to music, but like at the gym, everything, he's just listening to top 10 playlists, hip hop playlists on Spotify nonstop. But if you do that, if you listen to hip hop for 5 hours a day, you're gonna get what some of the pockets are. You're gonna get what the sound design. You're gonna get.
Mm.
I think he was more concerned in like the relevancy, so that kind of helped him to be like, okay, this is what's hot right now. This is what people are playing. This is what the sound is. All that stuff. But that's something that I've done recently. I've like started to produce more like an Anjuna Deep style deep house, and this is all new to me. And the number one thing that's helped me to get better at producing isn't to like do, at least at this point for me, to do like track breakdowns or anything like that. It's just to listen to as much music and to like kind of be around it as much as I can. Then like with Sam, um, like what Sam said, be intentional. So then normally I produce in the morning. So at night, the night before a production session, I'll just like go on to some of my inspiration playlists on Spotify, and I'll just like, like sit down. I'm in my studio, everything's kind of shut away. And then I'll just like break down some of the music. I'm not even bringing it into Ableton at this point. Like for me, I can hear what's going on just producing for as long as I have, but I'm just kind of like listening to it. I'm like, okay, cool. They've got, I don't know, like this type of sound design. I'm like, ooh, I can like hear this background texture that they have. I'm totally missing that in my songs. Tomorrow, I'm going to add that. So that's been super, super helpful
Mm.
for me.
I like that.
Cool. We got a couple questions on the mixing course, but that's far away from now. So we'll just kind of hold off on those. Otherwise, it is about an hour. Appreciate you all joining us. Always great to have all you here. It's like more fun when we're able to have these discussions. I believe for 2 weeks from now, we are going to be having it in the Facebook group. If anybody has any recommendations for that or anything like that, we're always trying to make these as valuable as we can. But yeah, I think the Facebook is just a little bit logistically easier. You've all seen the lag today. It's been a pain in the ass. I don't want to put you all through this again. We've had better luck with the Facebook. Save a couple snafus, but we're producers, not live streamers. But cool. Any last things to add, Sam?
Thanks so much for your time, guys. This is good. Again, we'll in the Facebook group next time. It will be a lot better. I'm sorry for the lag. And yes, I'm going to set up a system for emails and reminders, and also include a calendar invite in that email, so you can just quickly add it to your calendar if you want to, because I know someone requested that.
Awesome.
So thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you 2 weeks from now.
Sounds good.